channel, we showcase amateur athletes every day. If you're a player or coach and would like an interview, DM me for a collaboration. And if you're loving the content, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Today, we're talking about the women on the APP Top 25 poll and seeing their rankings this week. Coming at number one is the UConn Huskies, who comes in with a record of 2-0, and they're led by AZ Fudd, a senior guard, who so far is averaging over 21 points per game, 2.5 rebounds, and 4 assists. And she's aided by Sarah Strong, a sophomore forward who's averaging 21 points, 9 rebounds, and 4 assists. Coming at number two is the South Carolina Gamecocks with a record of 2-0, and they're led by Tanya Latson, who's a senior guard, 5'8", who's averaging so far 18 points and 2.5 rebounds. And she has a dynamic teammate, Joyce Edwards, a senior forward whose height is 6'3", and she's averaging over 18.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 2 assists. Coming in at number three is UCLA with a record of 2-0, and they're led by they have a senior guard who's 6 feet, who's averaging 18 points, 8.5 rebounds, 2 assists, and that's Gabrielle Jacque. And she is aided by Charlize Walker, a senior guard who's averaging over 10 points, 2.5 rebounds, and she has 6 assists. Coming in number four is Texas, who comes in a record of 2-0, and they're led by Madison Booker, a junior forward who's averaging so far 20 points, 9 rebounds, and 3 assists. And she has a dynamic teammate, Rory Harmon, who's a senior guard who's averaging over 4.5 points, 3 rebounds, and 5 assists. Coming in number five is the LSU Tigers with a record of 3-0, and they're led by Fly J. Johnson, a senior 5'10" guard who's averaging so far this season 16 points, 5 rebounds, and 4.7 assists. And she has a dynamic teammate, Malazi Fuwali, a junior guard who's 5'10", who's averaging 15 points a game, five rebounds, and 2 assists. Coming at number six is Oklahoma, who's coming in this week with a record of 2-0, and they are led by Reagan Beers, a senior center who's averaging 29 points, 10 rebounds, and 0 assists, and she has her teammate Sarah Williams, who's averaging 11 points, 14 rebounds, and 6 assists. Coming at number seven is Baylor, whose record is 2-0, and they went up 9 spots in the poll this week. And they're led by Talia Scott, a sophomore guard, 5'9", who's averaging 26 points per game, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists. And she is accompanied by Durrani Littlepage, a senior forward, 6'1", who has 7.5 points average, 8 rebounds, and 1.5 assists. 1.5 assists. Coming at number 8 is USC, whose record 2-0, and they went up 10 spots. And they're led by Lyndon Jones, a senior guard, 5'4", who's averaging 17.5 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 3 assists. And she has her teammate, Kara Dunn, a senior guard, who's averaging 9 points and 6 rebounds. Coming at number 9 is Maryland with a record 3-0, and they went up 1 spot. And they're led by Luchi Adanaway, a junior guard who's 5'10", who's averaging 14.7 points, 4.7 rebounds, and 2 assists. And she is led by U.S. Maryland is led by Sarah Bryce, who's 6'2", a senior guard, and is averaging 9.3 points per game, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists. And coming at number 10 is North Carolina State with a record of 1-1, and they went down one spot. And they're led by Zoe Brooks, a junior 5'10" guard who's averaging 18.5 points per game, 11 rebounds per game, and 5 assists. And North Carolina State is also led by Camille Pierre, a junior forward who's averaging 15.5 points, 16 rebounds, and 1 assist. Coming at number 11 is North Carolina with a record of 2-0, and they're led by senior guard Ndayi Navarre, who's 5'10", who's averaging 13 points per game, 5.5 rebounds, and 2 assists. And North Carolina is also led by Sierra Toomey, a sophomore forward who's 6'4", who's averaging 10.5 points a game, 11.5 rebounds, and 1.5 assists. Coming in number 12 is Tennessee with a record of 2-1, and they went down 4 spots. And they're led by Talacia Cooper, a junior guard who's averaging 17 points per game, 6 rebounds, 2.5 assists. And Tennessee is also led by Steve Freeman, a 6'4" senior guard who's averaging 12 points per game, 7 rebounds per game, and averaging one assist per game. Coming at number 13 is Ole Miss with a record of 2-0, and they went down one spot. And they are led by Cody McMahon, who's a senior 6-foot forward, who's averaging 16.5 points per game, 2 rebounds, and 1 assist. And Ole Miss is also led by Sierra Tile, who is a sophomore guard who's averaging 8 points per game, 7 rebounds, and 1 assist. Coming at number 14 is Michigan with a record of 2-0. They went down one spot, and they're led by Malaya Holloway, a 5'10" sophomore guard who's averaging 19 points per game, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists. And Michigan is also led by Tawali Delphos, who's a sophomore guard who's averaging 9.5 points, 6 rebounds, and averaging 1.5 assists per game. Coming at number 15 is Duke with a record of 1-1, and they went down 8 spots. And they're led by Toby Warner, who's a 6'2" sophomore forward who's averaging 21.5 points per game, 9.5 rebounds, and 1 assist. And Duke is also led by Tiani Major, a senior guard who's 5'9", who's averaging 6.5 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, and 5.5 assists. Coming at number 16 is Iowa State with a record of 3-0, and they went down 2 spots. And they are led by Audia Crooks, a junior center who's 6'3", who's averaging 23 points per game, 6 rebounds per game, and 2 assists per game. And Iowa State is also led by Addie Brooks, a junior forward who's 6'2", who's averaging 9 points per game, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. Coming at number 17 is TCU, and they're led by Olivia Miles, a senior guard who's 5'10", who's averaging 19 points per game, 5.5 rebounds, and 7 assists per game. And TCU is led by Clara Silva, a sophomore center who's averaging 11 points per game, 8.5 rebounds, and 1.5 assists per game. Number 18 is Notre Dame Fighting Irish, who comes in this week with a record of 2-0, and they went down 3 spots. And they're led by Hannah Halasso, a junior guard who's 6'3", who's averaging 29.5 points per game, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. And the Fighting Irish is led by KK Branford, a senior guard who's 5'11", who's averaging 17 points per game, 9 rebounds, and 3 assists. Coming at number 19 is Vanderbilt with a record of 1-0, and they're led by Malika Blakes, a senior guard, 5'8", who's averaging 21 points per game, 4 rebounds per game, and 2.5 assists. And Ayanna Mitchell, a 6'4" junior forward, who's averaging 12 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, and 2 assists. Coming at number 20 is Oklahoma State with a record of 4-0, and they went up 2 spots. And they're led by Reagan Beers, a senior center who's 6'4", who's averaging 18 points per game, 12 rebounds, and 1.5 assists. And Oklahoma State is also led by Sahara Williams, a junior forward, 5'11", who's averaging 9.5 points per game, 12 rebounds, and 4 assists. Coming at number 21 is Iowa, who comes in a record of 2-0, and they're led by Ava Hayden, a sophomore guard, 6'4", who's averaging 17.5 points per game and 12 rebounds. And Iowa is also led by Chazazi Wright, a sophomore guard, who's averaging 12.5 points per game, 2.5 rebounds, and 8.5 assists. Coming at number 22 is Louisville, who has a record of 1-1, and they went down 2 spots. And they're led by Tiana Roberts, a sophomore guard, 5'10", who's averaging 14.5 points per game, 1 rebound, and 1 assist. And Louisville is also led by Laurie Ziegler, a senior forward, who's averaging 12.5 points per game, 14.5 rebounds per game, and 3.5 assists. Coming at number 3 is Kentucky with a record of 3-0, and they went up 1 spot. And they're led by Clara Strack, a junior center who's 6'5", and she's averaging 17 points per game, 11 rebounds, and 2.3 assists. And Kentucky is also led by Tony Morgan, a senior guard who's averaging 9.7 points per game, 1.7 rebounds, and 7.3 assists. Coming at number 24 is Michigan State. They went down 1 spot, and they have a record of 2-0. And they're led by Grace Luton, who's a senior forward, who's 6'3", who's averaging 6.5 points per game, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists. And Michigan State is also led by Jalen Brown, a 6'1" senior guard, who's averaging 14 points per game, 5 rebounds, and 2.5 assists. And last but not least, Washington comes in a record of 1-0, and they're led by Sevilla Sellers, a 5'7" junior guard who's averaging 20 points per game, 1.5 rebounds per game, 5.5 assists. And Washington's also led by Eulalie Grugoski, who's 6'5", a senior center who's averaging 9 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, and 3.5 assists. For all your amateur news, subscribe to Formula Park 1 on YouTube. And all your women basketball coverage, you could also subscribe to Formula Park 1 on YouTube. Thank you for your support.